It's time to continue my division-by-division recap of the 2016 NFL Draft by taking a look at how the NFC East did. Oh boy, I love talking about the NFC East. But in general, I thought 3 of the teams in this division did really, really well. And the other team, the Eagles, a lot of it will hinge on one player. But if that one player pans out, they probably end up doing the best out of everybody in this draft because that one player is a quarterback that they took 2nd overall. So you can look in the description box. You can see all the picks that each team had, my best and worst, the grades that I've assigned them. Let me just give you some general thoughts on each team and their philosophy and their strategy, their approach, what have you. I'm going to start with the Eagles. Now, let me start off by going on blast mode just for a little bit here. You had to know early on in this draft process, especially after firing Chip Kelly, that you needed a long-term answer at quarterback. You had to know that you're looking for your next Donovan McNabb. You had to know that there was a chance you might really fall in love with one of the quarterback prospects in this class, whether that be Goff, Wentz, Paxton Lynch, one of the other guys, whoever the case might be. You had to know there was a possibility that where you were sitting originally in the draft to pick 13 could prohibit you from getting the guy that you really coveted. So as a result, if you knew that you were looking for somebody, having to know and preparing for all contingencies that that guy could be somebody that you really covet, that you decide is worth going up and getting, then why the hell would you give Sam Bradford and Chase Daniel all the damn money that you did? It makes no sense. You tied up so much of your salary cap into Sam Bradford and Chase Daniel for 2016. Now you're talking about a team that's taken even more of a salary cap hit in the quarterback position for a quarterback that they took number 2 overall, who their whole target is, we traded up massively to get him, so that way he potentially doesn't play for 1 to 2 seasons. That's ridiculous. And the notion that you would trade up to number 2 to take a quarterback, going from 13 to 8 and then 8 to 2 to take a guy to sit him for a year or two, knowing damn good and well the whole reason you're doing it is because Sam Bradford already proved he's not the answer, just like he proved he's not the answer at St. Louis, will continue to prove he's not the answer any damn where else he plays the rest of his overpaid, overrated, overpriced NFL career. So the whole reason you traded up to 2 is to go get a guy. Why the hell would that guy not be anointed immediately the starter? Why the hell would you sit there then and even pay Sam Bradford all that damn money? It makes no sense on God's green earth as to why they allowed this to occur. Unbelievable. Just simply unbelievable. And furthermore, what I don't understand from the draft history standpoint is, first, if the Eagles made this move this year, what the hell stopped them from making the move last year to go from 20 to 2 to get a superior quarterback prospect in Marcus Mariota? If you're going to do this shit anyways, why not do it when the better quarterback could have been had? That was the perfect fit for the last head coach's system. I don't get it. I just don't get it. And furthermore, I don't understand why teams feel the need to trade up so massively for quarterbacks when, frankly, at the end of the day, by and large, big moves up the board to go get a quarterback usually don't work. They don't. See RG3. See Mark Sanchez. Just as a couple of notable examples. Trading up to get quarterbacks doesn't pan out typically. So why would you think that you would be any different? It's really questionable because now, even if you take the guy and even if he can be that dude, you've hamstrung yourself significantly for the 2016 draft. The 2017 draft, and even the 2018 draft. So you're going to be the guy when he can't get the type of help around him he's going to need. Because you don't have the type of picks you would need to give him the help that he needs.
With that said, I look at the Eagles, and I look at Carson Wentz. If I was going to trade up massively for any quarterback in this draft class, it'd be the guy that I've been saying since October was the number 1 quarterback in this draft, and that was Carson Wentz. If Carson Wentz pans out, the Eagles are the big winners in this division in this draft. Because you look at an aging, injury-prone Tony Romo, an aging Eli Manning, and questionable quarterback position long-term at Washington with Kirk Cousins. I mean, is he really going to be a franchise guy for you for a long time? If Carson Wentz can become a franchise guy in 2, maybe 3 years, the Eagles are running this division. So I get the logic. And in this case, they traded up to me at least to get the number 1 quarterback in this draft. So with all the questions I have about it, I get it, and I understand it.
And I can't say that I wouldn't have done the same thing, frankly. The grading on this draft, I thought they had some other good picks on day 3 in particular. Even day 2, Samalo at some point in time should start at either guard or center for them. Might even be in 2016. I look at Smallwood, I look at Mills, and I look at McAllister. I thought those were 3 solid picks for where they got them at in the draft. I gave him a C grade because while I have questions about the logic of trading up for number 2, part of the problem is we don't know what the Browns have done with those picks yet. Probably will screw them up. A lot of this draft, frankly, is hinged on one player. As much as anything else, I can grade him an incomplete. But I'm a huge fan of Carson Wentz. And I think if you were going to trade up for a quarterback in this draft, unlike what the Rams did with Jared Goff, I think the Eagles made the smarter move by trading up big for Carson Wentz. That's just my opinion. I look at the Giants. And I think if it was not for the first-round pick that they had, a lot of people would say that they had the best draft out of anybody. Because when you look at days 2 and 3, Sterling Shepard, Darius Thompson, B.J. Goodson, Paul Perkins, Jarrell Adams, several steals, several really good values, and several guys that could be starters for them. I mean, B.J. Goodson in round 4, I think he's a starting middle linebacker at the NFL level. Paul Perkins in the 5th round out of UCLA, I think he's a guy at some point in time in 2016 is leading the backfield by committee in New York. Jarrell Adams was my number 1 tight end in this entire draft, and the Giants got him in round number 6. I had a second-round grade on him. Darius Thompson could be a really good complement in the back end of that secondary to go along with Landon Collins. Sterling Shepard makes a world of sense for them as a wide receiver in round number 2. Ruben Randall, so long. If they didn't have that intelligence failure that they did, thinking that either Conklin and or Leonard Floyd was going to be there at 10 only to watch as the Titans jumped above them at 8 to get Conklin, the Bears jumped above them at 9 to get the other guy in Floyd. The Giants weren't prepared for that, I don't think, and they didn't have a contingency in place to trade down. They kind of reached and panicked a little bit. Even with that said, though, I think Apple has starting NFL corner potential. Might take him a while to potentially realize it. He's got size, he's got length, he's got speed. He can play physically. I mean, there's a chance he could end up being the number 1 corner out of this draft. And if he is, then 3 years from now, we're going to probably be looking back at this Giants class and say it's one of the best draft classes the Giants have had in quite some time and was a home run for Jerry Reese. And right now it looks like it could be set up for a home run. It's like it's a triple that you wonder if they could have stretched into an inside-the-park home run, but it wasn't quite a home run that cleared the fences. But a really solid performance overall for the Giants. I look at the Redskins, another solid performance here. I look at their first 3 picks. To me, when you talk about a draft, if you have like your full bevy and amount of picks, you look at it and you say, if they got a superstar out of a draft, then obviously that raises the draft grade, even if a lot of the other draft didn't really pan out. But you'd like every year to be able to find 3 to 4 starters or impact players or at least key contributors. And I think the Redskins did that. They got 3 starters out of this draft. I love Josh Doctson out of TCU, their first-round pick. I mean, you even were able to pick up a 6th-rounder in 2017 because the Texans just had to go get Will Fuller. It was a nothing trade, but to me, they got the much better prospect, 1 pick less, meaning they could pay him a little bit less than they would have if they'd taken him just at 21. They could have done it. I'd been perfectly justifiable to do so. He was one of the last players I had an actual first-round grade in this draft, so I thought he was a real steal here for the Redskins. Round 2, Sua Cravens went about where he should. A kid that grew up a big Sean Taylor fan, a good leader, good, smart football player, not an explosive athlete, but a guy that you envision, if you can figure out a role for him, will be a starter and a contributor for you. Kendall Fuller in round number 3. I like him more as a safety than a corner, but at this point in time, in this portion of the draft, at the end of round 3, I thought he was good value for them here. Even on day 3, Ioannidis, the defensive tackle from Temple, I think could potentially be at least a nice rotational player, if not a low-end starter for them. And Keith Marshall, now that you've let Alfred Morris go, you've got Matt Jones and you've got Chris Thompson. But here's a running back that you got with some size and big-time speed at the end of round number 7. So a really good draft for McLuhan. It really, really was. I was surprised that they maybe weren't able to peel back and get some more picks either in this draft or more importantly maybe 2017's draft, which to me shapes up to look a lot better and stronger, especially at the top, first couple of rounds. This was a good performance by the Redskins and a solid B class for them. I do think the biggest winners in this draft were the Dallas Cowboys, and here's why. I know a lot of people question the selection of Ezekiel Elliott at number 4. They think there were better players available. They think it's a waste to take running backs around number 1 first. Ezekiel Elliott was the number 1 player on my board in this entire draft. So the Cowboys got him at number 4. That's a steal to me. Second, this whole narrative about running backs and you can get them later. For the most part, You could say that about any other position in the National Football League. Brandon Marshall was a 4th-round pick. Antonio Brown was a 6th-round pick. Julian Edelman was a 7th-round pick. Wes Welker, I think, was once undrafted, wasn't he? You look at the defensive side of the ball. Richard Sherman, Cam Chancellor, 5th-round picks. Michael Bennett, undrafted out of Texas A&M. I mean, I could go on and on and on. You know, why would you take this position when you get this guy later on? You do that on the offensive line. You could do that with the secondary. You could do that with the defensive line, linebackers. Pretty much, for the most part, every position except quarterback. Yeah, you'll have those outliers like the Breezes and the Bradys and the Romos that weren't first-round picks. But by and large, to get your franchise quarterback, it tends to have to come from the first round. Other than that, why would you draft any position in round number 1? And part of this is, especially in recent years, as the NFL powers that be, the minds involved with the draft process, have started to create a narrative and set things up a certain way to where running backs fall. Of course, naturally, more running backs are going to pan out in rounds 2 and 3 because in the past few years, at least, there haven't been very many of them taken in round number 1. There just haven't been. So, of course, as you go along, it's going to look even more accurate and even more correct because the numbers are so skewed. You don't have 4 or 5 running backs getting taken in the first round like you used to have a lot of years. Now you've got 1. In some years, you've got none. Next year, you might have 3, 4, 5. But to sit there and say that running backs don't carry first-round value, you shouldn't be taking them that high, to me, is fucking ridiculous. If the talent is that good and he can be that much of an impact to you like Ezekiel Elliott can for the Cowboys, you have to do it. For a team that has their Aikman and Tony Romo and their Irvin and Des Bryant and their Novacek and Jason Witten and the offensive line like they had in the 90s, you needed that Emmitt Smith type of guy. And I'm not comparing Ezekiel Elliott to Emmitt Smith. I compare Ezekiel Elliott to Matt Forte. But if you were a Cowboys fan in all these recent years, wouldn't you have loved to have Matt Forte? I know what you'll say. He was a 2nd-round pick. But maybe he should have been, going back to that 2008 draft, a 1st-round pick. Especially looking at the Bears taking Chris Williams, the tackle out of Vanderbilt, at number 14 in round 1. Ezekiel was the pick here. Jalen Ramsey would have made a lot of sense, and I would have praised him to Kingdom Come if they took Jalen Ramsey here too. But they didn't. They took Ezekiel Elliott. It was the right pick for them. It really, truly was. And in round 2 with Jaylon Smith, I know a lot are questioning, you got a small window to contend. Why would you take a guy that's not going to play in 2016? Look, personally, my opinion, if I had my choice between Smith and Jack in this draft, I still would have taken Jack because I had less concerns about his knee long-term than I did Jaylon Smith, because I know at least initially I'm going to get something good out of Myles Jack before he has to get any type of surgery. I don't know if I'm ever going to get anything out of Jaylon Smith. But I could get a stud. I could get a multi-time Pro Bowler. I could get a quarterback for my defense for 8 to 10 years in Jaylon Smith. I personally would have taken Myles Jack. Now, with that said, they still took Jaylon Smith. There's a chance that the Cowboys got 2 top 5 talents out of this draft class. One of them in round 1, one of them in round 2. Now, maybe there will be some questions about not trading up to get Paxton Lynch, and I understand that. But when you look at the entirety of the body of work, maybe they didn't need to. Ezekiel Elliott, Jaylon Smith, 2 future potential Pro Bowlers. Maliek Collins, Charles Tapper, 2 guys that I think have year 1 starter potential in Marinelli's cover 2 defense. You know, Maliek Collins at 3 technique defensive tackle. Charles Tapper, now maybe you can have him drop a little weight and you just send him at the quarterback. Have him get upfield. You know, the only pick that I really didn't like out of everything for the Cowboys was Dak Prescott. This screams Stephen McGee to me. It really does. I thought there were better quarterbacks on the board. Yeah, just because they drafted a quarterback doesn't make it a good pick. It doesn't mean I think Dak Prescott was a wasted pick. He wouldn't have been my choice at that point in time on the board. That's just me. And like I said, to me, it screams like a Stephen McGee pick as much as anything else. But even looking at the rest of day 3, Anthony Brown, Kavon, Frazier, I thought those were solid picks. Even Rico Gathers from Baylor. Yeah, he was a basketball player, but at that point in time in the draft, you could gamble on that athletic talent. You could gamble on that athletic upside. If it doesn't pan out, who fucking cares? And who's going to remember any damn ways? But what if he does? What if he does? Now, this is a really good draft for the Cowboys, and that's why I gave him a grade of A-. And in my overall winners and losers, I had him as the 2nd best draft out of everybody. Now, Stephen Jones, Jerry Jones, doing much better in recent years. I think a lot of that has to do with Stephen Jones. You look at the Cowboys and the formula and the pieces they're putting together. This is a team that seems to be positioning themselves for a potential Super Bowl run. Doesn't mean it will happen. But based off of what I saw out of this draft, it very well could. And some of these other teams in this division, I thought, did pretty well for themselves too.